Hey gang,
Hey folks,
I'm Will.
and I'm John.
And you asked for it.
Well, this is a new segment called You Asked For It. We get a lot of questions, don't we, Will?
We get a lot of questions, yes we do.
Whether it's email, phone call, or a YouTube page.
And we love it. We love the questions, so keep them coming.
Well, let's start with our first one.
Let's do it.
Bob from Eugene writes in, how much overhang should I use with my spay rod? Well, what is overhang?
Well, I think what Bob's referring to is, when you're casting head systems with spay rods and even single hand stuff, there's that point of which the head is hanging outside of the rod. And it's sometimes a little confusing, where you want to be right on the head at the tip top of the rod, where the head's right on it, or do you want it to be, out a little further, a little more running line out of the rod? I think that's what he's referring to.
Yeah, so how much of the head do we want hanging out? So that the amount of overhang is the amount of head hanging out, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I in general, I like about a foot.
Mm-hmm.
That's a no-brainer for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that I would agree. That's about right for me. I make some kind of adjustments. Sometimes if I'm starting close, starting short, I'll be right up on the head if I'm casting, the first section of the run. If I'm really trying to push it, if I'm really trying to get distance, that's when I start hanging the head out a little bit farther.
Yeah.
And then I'm using a little bit more sweep. You should probably get that.
Well, this is perfect. Ashland Fly Shop, this is John. Good. How you doing today? A salmon colored line by airflow. Is it a two-handed line or a single-handed line? Single-handed. Well, let me turn you over to Will. Here he is.
Hey, this is Will. Hey, buddy. Salmon colored with a blue running line. It's probably it's a single hand line, right? Absolutely. Yeah, I've been getting out. Fishing's been good. It's been a really good start to the year.
Well, that was a great phone call, Will.
That was pretty good.
That was a good question that guy had.
It was a pretty good question. All right, well, I got a couple question here from some folks I met this summer. Path Less Pedaled from YouTube and Instagram. Great folks. And they say, awesome. Do you use a 10-foot floating poly leader, then tie on tippet, or is it a 12-foot tapered leader? And I think they're referring to some of the microspay videos we did a little while back when we were doing that, when I was doing the using the little microspay with the salmon flies and some of that stuff that we did. So
yep.
I guess I'll just jump in here. I can go either way. Typically, I do like the floatability of a poly leader, but it does tend to require a little bit more effort to kind of get the energy through it to really punch it out. It's not the greatest scenario with a salmon fly, a dry fly, because it's, that's a pretty awkward thing to cast. But it's kind of splitting hairs whether you're using, I guess I would say a mono leader, whether you're casting a salmon fly or just traditional flies. I feel a little bit more comfortable casting a standard 12-foot mono leader or something. What do you think?
Yeah, I think with a poly leader or verse leader, you get good turnover. Mm-hmm. That's an added benefit, especially in the wind.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, if poly leader, verse leaders that sink, if we're swinging a traditional fly, that's like a little baby sink tip.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes, if it's a really light head, turnover, it'll hinge if it's too heavy,
mm-hmm.
right?
Yes.
So sometimes a mono leader is better, just for if you're just doing obviously a full floating deal.
Yeah. I totally feel that way. I like poly leaders a lot. I just generally feel like my energy going through the head, the Scandi, not the greatest caster, but really getting a lot of that energy into the line with a really nice tight loop. That's when I see those poly leaders turning over a little bit easier. I feel like the standard steelhead leaders, mono leaders, tapered mono leaders are a little more forgiving, I guess I would say. So that's that.
All right, well, on that topic from also our trout videos, Aiden from YouTube writes in, awesome work, guys. What head line are you throwing? Well, we used a lot of heads that day.
Yes, we did.
We used the Scandi body.
Mm-hmm.
We used a wolf ambush line.
Mm-hmm.
We used some Skagit shorts. So, but I think the line that's under the radar that we really like is that Scandi body.
We love it. It's for little short spays, micro spays. It really splits the difference between a Scandi and a Skagit. It loads the rod well. I think you can choose a weight that's kind of right in between Skagit and Scandi. You can use light sinking versaleaders. You can use standard leaders. It's just a very, very nice head on those rods.
Yeah, and at 23 feet on a trout spay or small switch rod, it's just a really nice size. It doesn't feel super short, and it's not like a longer Scandi that's going to require more room and a little more skill to cast. So at 23 feet, those things fly.
Yeah, I agree. So it's not super short like an 18-footer or something. It's 23, so you still can get a nice loop going, and yeah, really nice. Yeah, we really like those Scandi bodies, although everything we cast, if you really need to push something bigger, Skagit's always a great way to go. But if you're fishing a more general size fly, like I was doing larger dries to standard soft tackles, things like that, those Scandi bodies are just freaking awesome. They're so fun.
Yeah.
George from Ohio. Thanks, George. I fish a lot for Great Lakes steelhead. I will be in Oregon this summer to fish for steelhead. What kind of water should I be looking for when I'm fishing the Upper Rogue during August? That's a good question.
Yeah, I've never fished the Great Lakes or in the rivers, and I'm sure they're very diverse. But, right now we're fishing the Upper Rogue, and whether you're on the Upper Rogue or the Deschutes, it's that time of year where we have warmer water temps. Mm-hmm. Mid 50s to low 60s, and I think steelhead are in water you really think about that they should be in, classic water, but they're also, you can find them in that more oxygenated water, that heavier, choppier water. So I think, other than the obvious, that's where I'm going to look for them, and not so much that really slower water we think of maybe more in the fall or winter steelhead.
That's a really great point, because I don't get out quite as much as I should, and I tend to not think about that as much when I'm fishing through runs and stuff. I tend to kind of focus on water that I might later in the year. So I always really appreciate hearing that kind of stuff, and I always remember when I hear it this time of year, look for fish in the heavier water and stuff, and I think that is a very good point. And I would say the same thing. You didn't really specify swinging or nymphing, but I would say kind of the same thing about nymphing. I would look for them. I have done a fair amount of nymphing on the Rogue, and I can, remember many times when, I've got the nymphs right up in the head of the run, and it's like 1, 2 count, and boom, there he is. So I think that those tops of runs where they can kind of push up into that water and feel more comfortable in that oxygenated water, I think that is a good tip. You still want to look at the, kind of the middle part of the run. We have a lot of those really nice troughs and stuff in the Rogue. That's always great for nymph fishing. So we kind of look for fish still in those kind of usual spots, but not like we see them when the water drops. But yeah, I like those points quite a bit, and there's plenty of that water in the Upper Rogue.
And we cover that topic briefly in the upcoming Spay Fishing with Jon episode. And so you can get a look at some of that water coming up here real soon.
I'm stoked to see that. You guys got some good stuff that day. It's cool.
Yeah. Okay, well, keep sending your questions in. We'll answer them the best we can.
We'll put them right here on the show.
And don't forget, you asked for it.
Nice. you get the drift.